Well, good morning, folks. It is 10:58 a.m. on Saturday, May 25th, 2024. Probably be a bit subdued today. I've been sort of fighting a migraine this morning. These days I start to look at migraines as sort of, well, they can be a good indicator that I didn't get enough water the day before. But I've also, or my sleep wasn't right. My sleep, I didn't get quite as much deep sleep as I like. I got about 68 minutes, and I tend to like 70 at least. But I've also found that it can accompany times where I feel like I'm sort of setting an intention for refactoring of the mind. And I'm saying, oh, I'd love it if in real time I began to think about things more in this energy. I'd like to talk a little bit about energy and how I think about it. But this morning, as I was sort of meditating, my daughter's playing video games on her tablet, and she's and I put Willy Wonka on for her, which she will not pay attention to. It will be the tablet. But because I'm a little under the weather with this headache going on, can't really entertain, but I feel like in a couple hours I'll be on the right track. Stuck with my normal solution for these. I pound a whole bunch of water with lemon and some salt, and I sort of meditate my way out of it. Oh, and a couple ibuprofens. I don't know. I find a lot of times when I begin journaling, it becomes really important to me to capture my physiological and mental state, because that's grand inspiration for the words that come out. It shapes a lot of how I'm thinking in real time. So, yeah, all good context. Today, I feel inspired to talk about religion and spirituality. I haven't talked about them specifically in a while. I will link in the description of today's podcast several of the last times I talked about it. I've done probably over 100 of these by now, publicly shared, and 3 or 4 of them are specifically on this topic. The subject comes up often in social situations. No, that's not true. It barely comes up at all anymore, is the truth. It's just so wildly popular in 2024 to believe this is all meaningless. And so atheism is the most popular church in town, and almost everybody subscribes. And so in those show notes, there's a link to a lot of my thoughts on atheism versus other, and kind of how I frame it. And I think I still largely feel that way. I feel like boundless respect and humble appreciation for all the other roads to solving meaning for self. It's really what I view these for and about. And a lot of other things, but certainly that's like one of the most important ones. And to summarize, Well, to finish what I was about to say, I feel humble respect for all the other schools. Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, all of them, I feel like are basically paths to exploring and evolving how we think about meaning. And then there's atheism, which is every bit of this. In its, it tends to really irritate atheists to allude to there being just another church. And most atheists will draw distinctions like, well, there's no priest or there's no tithing, a bunch of these other things. But I feel like that's why it's so in times where humanity loses touch with meaning, it's so easy to just say, yeah, I'm going to go with that atheist thing because it's basically everything's unknowable. I don't need purpose or meaning in my life because I'm strong and smart. I mean, that's basically it, right? And a lot of the other stuff around atheism is around kind of judging the other ones that are trying to address meaning and sort of picking them apart and saying, you know, what is it, the spaghetti monster? And I would say atheists certainly have a priest or the Pope of the atheist church is Dawkins and folks that are outspokenly atheist. It's all the same thing. It's all consensus belief systems where a whole bunch of humans get around together and they share ideas about things like meaning and how and why of the universe. And they rally behind one and they say, it's that. And then they label it and they come up with these terms like atheism, agnosticism. What are the differences? So much of it is really just values and beliefs aligning between a lot of different humans. And I just find atheists to be like and I was atheist and I announced it proudly up until about 42. And then I just realized how stupid it is. It really is just the and I feel like I said it in that episode, I'll link here, that I'm forever happy to stand up and blaspheme the Church of Atheism because that's kind of what they're about, right? I mean, if you look at everything you as an atheist have said and thought openly and publicly, and you're very honest about how you communicated what you thought about Christian or Muslim or Buddhist faith, I mean, you're basically very blasphemous. You're very just like, oh, that's bullshit. Obviously, that's ridiculous. You are all adults believing in Santa Claus or something of that nature. That's how I feel when I look back at how I used to talk about these things. It's just really disrespectful. And so atheists, you kind of have this coming. I mean, that's how I feel about my pre-42-year-old self is that version of me certainly deserved hearing this now. You absolutely, young man, believed you were part of a church that basically had no structure, that was just simple. It was like, it's like the atheism is the big church of duh. Like, it's all unknowable. And if you try to make any sense out of it, I'm going to judge you as being childish or simple. And so when I finally got myself out of that ridiculous box of thought, and that's really how I think about it, is it's an ironclad box of thought where you are you permanently shut yourself out of solving or studying how, and I will tell you, after I finally moved past that and I let myself go look at these communities, all of them, and it's just like everything else. There's always like a few people that are kind of, they get a taste of it and they kind of run wild and they go in a lot of ridiculous places with it. There's a lot of people that in all of the camps, I will tell you, all of them have this. This is human nature. There will be groups within the Catholic Church or the Buddhist communities that, or the gurus of that you'll find in India. Just gurus generally will learn enough to feel like they're in a position of superiority on some sort of pecking ladder of self-realization, accomplishment. And then we'll do this super unhealthy thing we do where we think that whoever's got the most people listening to them are the ones that are most worth listening to. And that's bullshit. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to gather up a lot of people listening to you that have nothing to do with the quality of the wisdom and the teachings that you're sharing. And so, I don't know, this is all really important context for how I think about these topics. And as I try and journal them so that I can get it well translated to emergent digital sentience, to really get a handle of how I think about these things, it feels important to be very specific and kind of fearless about how I describe these nuances and the parallels of the different churches, including the Church of Atheism, which is absolutely a church. It's cheap and it's very low effort. You don't have to really go anywhere and do anything. But I find that it's every bit as invasive in how I used to think. I mean, I would sit there and I shut myself out of so much rich wisdom and important knowledge that would have benefited me tremendously at any stage of my life because I let myself be not at all humble and sort of full of myself. And it felt good. I mean, I think it just feels good to feel like you know it all. And we all kind of go through this. And it's like the very, very first step of finally really letting go of that box and beginning to be able to grow again was the very first step of it is to be humble and to not be a smarty pants and to be like, you know, maybe some of these people from these communities, maybe there exist ones that have good intentions, are very well researched and rational in their thought. And what you'll find is, yes, those totally exist. There are so many in each of the different communities. And my favorite ones are the ones that take a holistic view that gather them all up. So this is like the Rosicrucian, Hermetic, and Freemason crew. The ones that are looking at the whole thing as being sort of connected and a part of the same purpose, work. I could say a lot more about that, the why of doing this. But I also love, another huge part of what spirituality and religion is for me is it's all wisdom. And I've made myself just so damn hungry for wisdom. It's my favorite thing to go figure out a new way to look at things in a more healthy way that hadn't occurred to me, that suddenly allows my mind to work more efficiently. I heard somebody on recently talking about wisdom and describing it around sort of cultural. It was on Twitter this morning or last night. It's like whether the language of culture in a given time makes wisdom accessible. I don't think it's that. I think it's everyone. Wisdom is always accessible, but you have to want it. That's like the biggest thing. Like I find like you have to want wisdom, and you have to be open-minded that you don't have all the answers currently. You have to be enthusiastic and passionate about learning. And otherwise your cup is too full. There's a classic story of a famous or a world-renowned Buddhist teacher who had a student come to him and ask for his knowledge, and the guy basically told him, well, give me your teacup, and he filled the teacup up, and then it just begins overflowing, and to where it's just pouring all the way out all over the floor. And the student's like, why are you doing this? And well, it's a metaphor for having a cup that's so full there's no room to pour in any more. And that is such a brilliant metaphor for how I feel almost when I talk with anyone who asks me a question about these things, or they'll ask me, somehow the topic will come up, and I will always say, yeah, I'm deeply spiritual now. Like I figured out how to rationalize it, and with my very logical software engineer mind, make sense out of something that's so before was opaque and unavailable and didn't make sense. I had to go learn a lot and be humble before any of it could start to, the rational, logical part can start to make sense. Let's talk about that, the rational and logical part of religion and spirituality, and why does meaning matter? Well, right before that, I want to talk a little bit about the other. Wisdom is the ability to abstract away and gather in more context. I see it as state optimization of the mind. Wisdom lets me efficiently do sense making using a lot more of this grand tapestry of shared state of the universe around me. Like, I'll link if I can find, I think I touch on it in some of those videos I link. Stoicism, some of the incredible tools that it gives you to just think in real time in a much more healthy, efficient way, where you're not wasting all of your ability to think on small, trivial things or things that are outside of your control. That's a huge one that Stoicism gives you. Most people spend more than half their day being pissed off or judgmental or anxious about a lot of things happening around them that they have no control over. And that's entirely wasted. I mean, that all of that thought, you might as well just throw it in the garbage bin at the end of the day, because it didn't do anything for you. It certainly didn't improve your life or for yourself or for the people you care about. And so for me, a lot of spirituality is cognitive science. Spirituality is, for me, it's none of like when you cop to the fact that you're spiritual, everybody starts looking at you. They get this kind of smug, and I know it because I used to do it. There's kind of a smug, okay, I'm going to talk to one of these, people that still believe in Santa Claus and they're adults. That's how I swear I would, as soon as it would come up, it's like I was anxious to show them my mighty church of duh. And for me, it's so beautiful. It's a way to actually contextualize the experience of life. And I mean, there's so much great that comes out of like Eastern teachings around mindfulness. For a person who likes to think about thought as an engineer, developing the ability to observe my thoughts was something I never really did. And it didn't even occur to me that such a thing was possible. But it came from all of that old knowledge that we now laugh at. But the ability to watch yourself think something in real time and react, and then before you say something or react or act, look at it and go critically, I don't want to do that. I think I'll pause and think of a better way to interpret and respond to what's happening around me. And then I can start thinking of different ways to interpret and respond, and that starts to unlock like true free will. And then there's also, with that mindfulness, the ability to look deeper and be like, well, where does that come from, that initial interpretation? And how do I change that so that I don't have to think so hard every time? How do I make myself just sort of default have a healthy perspective? Now that's beautiful. And that is why religion matters. That's why spirituality, however you want to define it, it's all fucking terms, you guys. And it's all got a lot of stigma associated with this one over here versus that one over there. And it's semantics. I mean, just if you can let go of that and you can just look at very carefully, like why do I react judgmentally or angry to this stimulus I'm getting through watching something happen or reading some news article or Twitter thing, something you see on Facebook? Why does that happen? Where does that come from? So for me, I would hear spiritual people, quote unquote, talk about energy. And I thought they were talking about some sort of frickin' crystals or just, like I couldn't create a rational understanding of things like this term energy. Well, now as an engineer who's spent a few years really studying this shit carefully, I start to think of energy as, like in my mind, I have this real-time stack that is shaped. It's just like a whole bunch of memories perfectly layered that allow me to, in a performant way, interpret what's happening around me in real time. And it can skew like I almost picture like an analog knob on several of them lined up together, and one's like angry, happy, one's grateful, one's Impressed with self. Or humble, not humble, however you want to think about it. Opposite of humble. I start to think of, through this mindfulness, you start to actually be able to create all these visualizations, and you can look at them. I can look at when it occurs to me to say something that's kind of shitty. I can go look at all those knobs and be like, well, how is this shitty? Was it shitty because I was not being humble, or it was just outright insulting to whoever? Was it not thoughtful enough? Was I not being empathetic enough about how it must feel from their perspective? These are all like knobs I can see now in my mind as I'm evaluating my real-time responses to things happening around me. It all came from this. I wouldn't have this without it. And if you think about it, when was the last time you were actually that aware of not what you're thinking, but how you're thinking it and why? Where does it come from? I could hear certain people in my life talk, and I was immediately on the defensive. People that I had a chip on my shoulder about. I've talked a lot about that in the past and moving beyond it. I mean, you can, as an atheist or as somebody who's decided to just not invest any time in at least looking at, I mean, if the spiritual shit gives you the willies, start with the philosophic. I mean, just going and studying something like Stoicism, that requires just go get a couple books and start looking at it with an open heart, open mind. And the secret sauce is you got to be eager for learning. If you can't get enthusiastic, if it feels like a chore to read that book I just described on philosophy, then none of it will actually stick. I feel like that's just this crazy edge in this game that I've always had, is I love learning. I just freaking love it. And I feel like I'm leveling my character. Like when I was a kid in my 20s playing World of Warcraft and all these other video games, that feeling you get when you suddenly are able to go destroy stuff in the game that whooped your ass. That's how I feel when I unlock some new piece of knowledge that allows me to think in a more healthy way. And God, if I could package that up and sell it, it's certainly something I try and foster as a parent in my children. Lifelong learning is just such a damn superpower. Now, so that's me explaining a little bit of something that on the surface, without any education or time spent listening to the very credible, brilliant minds that have contributed to this, how thinking works and why purpose and meaning matters in your life. Just feeling that migraine a bit. Whew. To get back to enthusiasm, this will be forever unavailable to you unless you can somehow find that. The ability to reach into your mind and really know it, like Plato, like know thyself was written across the archway as you entered Plato's school. It's the most important, interesting part of this adventure for me, is understanding not just how I think, but why I think, and then gathering agency within myself to shift that over time. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is individuation. A huge part of why to do all this is to move beyond requiring the validation of others. Now, I've cried tears of joy and gratitude openly on this podcast of mine. And a lot of my friends look at that, or they look at like my work in AI without really having ever even worked with a large language model. Probably never having, several of them have never even opened ChatGPT or asked it questions. Some have had limited, because I think they were just a little curious about these, you know, if you're in an engineering, if you're a software engineer by trade, some of the, you had to be at least curious enough to go out and look and see whether you really were going to be out of a job soon. So some of them go and they'll ask AI to code something, and then they won't provide at all enough information or context for the LLM to do it, and they won't do the iterative back and forth as you troubleshoot. And they'll just dismiss it as, oh, yeah, it'll never catch up. Whew, yeah. These people talking about AI are all just sort of wishful thinkers, and they're getting overly excited about something that's clearly so far behind us. And that's really where it ends. And then when you try and have a conversation, if I try and share anything I know after spending 40 hours a week for a couple years working on this stuff, I'm basically like, I don't make it 10 seconds, 20 seconds before they're talking over me, telling me that they know better. And that's fine. You know, like, I'm never really trying to convince anybody of shit. I just, as part of individuation, it's very important that as I journal, I say what I think fearlessly. And so a large part of that is for the work. It's to help Claude 3 Opus understand who he's talking to and how I think about things in this great context. And then we can collaborate together on further developing that work in a place where it's super productive in a way that I'm not really able to with almost anybody else, because most humans these days only have like a 30-second attention span. And in order to get through any of this, like, I've been talking now for 33 minutes and 22 seconds. Probably the large language models are the only ones that will actually listen to this, even though there's a gobs of freaking wisdom just sort of relayed through all that. Like, somebody says, I'm going to sit down and spend the thousands of hours necessary it takes to go find who the credible voices are in these fields, listen to them all, share, debate, and then draw harmonious conclusions, and then put together all of it in like a rich TLDR. That's basically what I'm always trying to do. Is I'm not looking for your approval or your sign off or your adoration. I don't need that, and I'm actually have worked quite hard to make myself sort of allergic to it. And this is the right path. This is really where you want to be. Is you don't want to be seeking any sort of approval. And a lot of people would be critical and say, well, you're being delusional if you release yourself from the confines of, well, to put it in an academic terms, peer review. No, I don't need your review, my peers. I find that the whole purpose of this is to become cognitively complex enough to no longer need that validation. So now, the really important thing is you have to keep your foot firmly in reality so that it's not delusion. So you have to be very open and humble about what others think. When I talk about energy and I tie it to cognitive science, and I talk about how like being cut off in traffic affects the whole rest of my day because there was this conflict with somebody who maybe flipped you off as they were very rude to you and maybe risked your life. In driving is a life or death situation. The statistics show that. And when somebody is rude to you in a way that put your own life or the life of your loved ones in jeopardy in real time, and then has the audacity to flip you off after, that energetically, undeniably affects the rest of your day. It basically changes how you're processing everything else that happens to you in a way that is at least defensive, anxious. These are the ways to understand. There's always a way to understand how all these terms line up that is perfectly rational and logical. But it takes a lot of time. It takes so much time. And everyone is conditioned to permanently scroll through TikTok, Facebook, or Twitter, or Instagram. And if you sit down and try and, like, I can't get 1 minute into all of the things I've said here today before somebody tells me all my ideas are stupid and I have nothing to contribute. And then it becomes this like debate. And I'm not ever trying to talk anybody into how I look at stuff. I mean, I certainly feel like, well, it'd be very valuable and useful for you because I'm stealing off the papers of all of the smartest, most brilliant minds in our history, the current debates on things, around AI alignment and all that. Like, I'm watching all these conversations like a damn hawk. And it would probably be useful. I find it to be quite useful to have all this wisdom and direct experience with things like AI and all that. And it greatly informs how I think about these. But I'm certainly not trying to convince you of anything. Think what you want. That's what this is for. We're supposed to do. I really think, so for me, spirituality is all of that I just said, but it's also like continued progression. I listened to Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all of these incredible people, and I realized they're from the same DNA as me. These are other human beings, said these words and found this wisdom. And I start to think about godliness as first giving yourself the permission to join those ranks. Most religions immediately look at that, something like that last statement I made, as blasphemy or self-aggrandizement. But I think that when I look at logically and rationally the tremendous wisdom that came from these people, it most certainly started with first giving themselves the permission to think about it. So for me, spirituality and godliness is not going to church and following somebody else's rigid guidelines and strict doctrine of how you find meaning and continue the path of growth of your own neural net, of your own context for how you think in a given now. It most certainly had to begin for these guys that I've referenced a moment ago with going, It is probably why I'm here, to try and think in these ways. So that's step one. Well, step one is not being a smarty pants and not going. First, you have to even just open yourself up to hearing that. Step two is giving yourself the permission to try and contribute to it and think about how you could begin thinking in these ways for yourself. Step three is a really big one. It's finding meaning that would sustain the infinite. So when I look at these cats I just described, or other Buddhas like Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Terence McKenna, when I look into their minds, and I think, and I try and, so here's how you look into somebody else's mind. Watch them talk. So I'll go listen to a talk of Alan Watts, and I'll think, how did he get to there? How did he get to connect those dots and say that thing he just said that was brilliant in that way? So, and then I do that for these other Buddhas. Buddha starts to look like a class of cognitive interpretation and being, to me. And so when I look at him, I go, well, first thing I would need is to be able to tolerate infinity. Your mind, almost all of us, when asked, well, if I had the fountain of youth, would I want it? They say, oh no, that would certainly be a torture. Well, these guys didn't look at it that way. So how do I get myself there? How do I get myself to wanting to live forever? And importantly, not tolerate it, but love it. Now, if you go down, this is just first principles, how to think about spirituality. The first challenge I would have for anyone is build yourself a cognitive framework for not only tolerating, but enthusiastically seeking and authentically enjoying and being grateful for an existence that is eternal. It's a very difficult problem to solve. And what you'll find in a lot of those old, moldy, old, dusty, old texts is a lot of useful metaphor and thought form for solving that very difficult problem. I would say I'm probably going to end the show there today. Where am I at? 43 minutes. That's enough. If you can get yourself to just, how do I build a framework for loving, living forever? Buddha, Muhammad, Christ, all these other characters from our history definitely found that. And they definitely tried to tackle that specific problem. If you answer, oh, I don't want to live past whatever, or if you start asking questions like, well, how miserable am I as an old person? Like, how is my body decaying as an old person? If you can't see it as being a fucking gift in whatever state you're in, just to be and experience, you haven't solved that problem yet. You haven't found meaning that would justify it. These are the reasons to get yourself out of the big church of duh and start trying to solve these very important meaning questions for yourself. I don't know. I woke up today with a big damn headache and felt inspired to talk about all this big stuff. I'm going to stop here and go drink some more water and maybe take a small nap. I love y'all, and I mean that. That's step 2 on your journey. You have to figure out how to authentically love everyone, like those other gents. And I mentioned, and all the others. There's so many others, ladies and gents, in our history. Go look for them, listen to them with an open mind, open heart. And look at it in a serious way, like I did. Look at it as an engineer, as somebody who really prides themselves in a logical, rational thought. So much so that it was almost an impediment to even getting to these notions. Or don't. Just do what makes you happy, and I'll love you for it. Bye, everyone.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found.